Hey everybody, welcome back to our series in the book of Revelation, and we are going line by line, verse on verse, verse by verse, to study the book of Revelation in depth and also give us some application from it, because a lot of people, they read a book of Revelation and they can kind of understand it sometimes, but they don't know how to make application, and that's kind of what we're doing at the same time as we probe through the scriptures. So we're going to be looking at the second seal that Jesus breaks, which is the releasing of the rider on the red horse. And we're going to be explaining all of that today. So if you have your Bibles, we're going to start in Revelation 6, verses 3 through 4. And it says this, "And when he opened the second seal, I heard the second living creature saying, 'Come and see.' Another horse, fiery red, went out, and it was granted to the one who sat on it to take peace from the earth, and that people should kill one another, and there was given to him a great sword." So let's unpack that a little bit. So what we see is the Lamb opening the second seal. And like we mentioned, the whole scroll that the Lamb opens, that Messiah opens, is judgment. So it includes the seal judgment, includes the trumpet judgment, the seven thunders judgment, and the bowl judgment. So when people tell you, oh, no, the real judgment from the wrath of God doesn't come later on, I'm sorry, when he's breaking the seals, that's an indication of the land committing to judgment. So the breaking of the first seal, this begins God's judgment. So it's a 7-year tribulation of judgment, not a half of the tribulation is judgment. The whole thing is divine judgment, okay? So anyway, so the second, the living creature then issues a command to come and see. So this living creature is obviously a cherubim, that's us around the throne, and now this living creature is inviting John to come and see, and invites us to come and see and understand what this is trying to say. You got to remember, the book of Revelation is very symbolic, but here's the great thing about the symbolism. The symbolism always is traced to the other passages in the Bible, primarily the Old Testament. So one of the things that you have to understand about the book of Revelation, there's 450 references to the Old Testament. So it's the idea that you got to know your Old Testament when you're studying the book of Revelation. John just assumes you know it, and he expects you to know the symbolism behind it. Now, here's the thing. If he introduces a new symbolism, he will explain it. That's the great thing about the Bible, is John will explain new symbolism. He will explain what that means. But if he doesn't, he is telling you that symbolism comes back from the Old Testament. And so what we find out is, okay, the first thing we see is a fiery red horse. And a horse and a rider on that horse symbolizes war, symbolizes someone's coming to battle. So when we see Jesus coming on a white horse, again, the horse represents coming for battle, coming to conquer, someone coming, to fight is the idea. Okay, so we saw that a little bit with the Antichrist coming on a white horse. He pretends to be a peacemaker, but he's coming with a bow on a white horse to conquer and to go about that. And so anytime you see a horse, it's about conquering. And the way this conquering is going to happen is through war. So what do I mean? Fiery red, that comes from the book of Zechariah. There's a red horse there as well. But red in the Bible symbolizes bloodshed many times, okay? Bloodshed. And so the horse symbolizing conquering. And so when you put the symbolic nature together, a rider on a red horse is basically war. And it's a collapse of peace is what it's trying to say. And the rider then is given power to take peace from the earth and incite war, that people should kill one another. That's the idea. And so this rider is given a large sword, and the sword obviously is meant to go to war with. When Christ comes back, he comes back to war. He's not carrying a literal sword, but it's the sword that comes out of his mouth, because he's going to war. So the sword represents going to war and conflict is the idea, okay? And so all the symbolism is this, that this rider is coming on the world stage, and it's a symbol for global conflict, okay? And notice the progression in the seal. So you have the rider on the white horse, which we said was the Antichrist, and he comes as a man of peace, but yet he has a bow with no arrows, but it's bent towards threatening people, right? And we know that the Antichrist is a man of war because he worships the god of war, so to speak. He worships, military might. So we know he comes with that background. But what ensues then after his introduction of this false peace is war starts happening. And the fact that it's happening in the book of Revelation means that it is global. This is a global conflict. That's the idea. All the things, all the judgments that are happening in the book of Revelation are global in nature. They affect the entire earth. That's why you'll see this term in the book of Revelation, I think 11 times, where it talks about those who dwell on the earth. That's really not what it says in the Greek. What the Greek literally says is earth dwellers. And the plagues and the judgments of God hit the earth dwellers. So it's the concept that in order to avoid the judgments of God, like the church is promised to avoid the judgments of God, right? No condemnation for the church. You have to be off the planet to avoid all the judgments. And so, again, what's my point? It goes back to all of the issues are global in nature, okay? They're not regional, they're global. So this means that there is a global world war that ensues after the Antichrist rises to power and gets his false peace, does his deal with Israel, and after this false peace, that he's the man of peace, the world breaks down into war immediately. And the false peace that the Antichrist seemingly ushered in has broken down, and things are going chaotic, okay? So it's basically what we have is World War III. That's what we're talking about. But even worse than World War III, it's a global war. Yes, World War II was bad, and World War I was bad, but not at this level. This is unlike anything. It's unprecedented because everyone's going to war. It'll engulf the entire earth, okay? There won't be a place on the planet that's not in turmoil, is the idea. And so again, this period is different. This is called the tribulation period. And with the fact that the rider is given a sword means that peace has been removed from the world, okay? This is God's judgment of removing peace. And so the natural inclination of man is to fight. Man always wants land, he always wants power, he always wants money and wealth, and people want to be king of the earth. That's really what it comes down to. And so everyone falls into this trap. They are not, I know this is a misnomer, that people will just bow the knee to the Antichrist. That's not how it goes in the first half of the tribulation. There is a vying for power. And Antichrist is vying for power, no doubt about that, but the other world leaders are vying for power as well. Remember, you've got 10 world leaders at this time over 10 global regions, and they're all vying for power. So this war is global. It includes all 10 regions of the planet. And there's nothing in any human history that comes close to this. This is the ultimate. And again, human greed, lust for power, control, that's what allows it to happen. I mean, it's like God lifting his hand off, and he just lets people of this world go after what they want. And we know that the restraining efforts of the Holy Spirit are removed from evil when the church is raptured. The restraining efforts of the Holy Spirit are removed, and just all Hades breaks loose, man. It gets really, really bad. But here's the thing about, let's talk about war, the historical perspective on war and society. When you study the role of war in society, you come to a conclusion about wars. What you start realizing is that war is essential for economic and social control for the world leaders. They actually want to be in perpetual wars. They say they're for peace, but they're not. See, war serves as a stabilizer for national economies and is a great means of controlling populations, okay? So if war was abolished, then governments need to be able to, another way to enforce a substitute form of control. But war is a way of getting control of things, okay? It's a way of fattening the coffers economically. And here's the thing, the biblical truth that we know is Romans 3:17 says, the way of peace they have not known. These warmongers don't want peace, no matter what they say to you. And what we have going on in the world today is what we call the military-industrial complex. And the definition of that is that it refers to the powerful and often symbiotic relationship between a nation's military, its government, and defense industry. So if you remember President Eisenhower's warning, he said this in 1961, and he warned, quote, in the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. And he was right. So what you have in a military-industrial complex, and again, this is all going in that direction, is you have a government/military collaboration where the governments will allocate vast sums of money, billions of dollars today, to military spending and defense contracts. And then you have the corporate influence in the defense contracts. So like major defense contractors, Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Raytheon, they all profit from America going to war or funding other wars or whatever it is, whether it's Ukraine or whatever. And what you end up having is many former governmental officials work for these companies, which ensure their influence on the government. And so what their motives from an economic standpoint is the perpetuation of war and conflict. See, war generates profits, creating incentives for prolonged global conflicts. That's what you see with the Ukraine war. That's why America has been pumping billions of dollars into the Ukraine for what? A proxy war with Russia? It's really bad. But the military-industrial complex supports things like that. So when Trump goes in front of and does the State of the Union in front of Congress, and he says he's going to end the war in Ukraine between Ukraine and Russia. Democrats won't stand. They won't applaud that. And Trump went over there and said, "What do you guys want? 5 more years of war?" And that's exactly what they said. Yes, we want more years of war. They literally said that. Elizabeth Warren said it, and they were all clapping in unison that they wanted more war. Well, there's a telltale sign. These people are not for peace. They want war. And why? Because there's profits involved in it. There's abilities to control things in other nations. And again, if you look at military interventions and arms sales, they often align with the corporate interests. And that's what we call the private-public partnership in the military-industrial complex. And so foreign policy and public manipulation happen all the time. So politicians will come out and give false justifications for war. And that's what Biden did with Ukraine and giving them money. Oh, these are national security threats, Russia's a threat, and it's like there was false justifications given for a war against Russia. That's what was happening. So the public is often kept uninformed or misled to justify endless wars. And so thank God that like Trump wants to end these things. It's ridiculous, right? So as we know, trillions of dollars are spent on military expansion. And then you have weaponized technology, which fuels cyber warfare, artificial intelligence, surveillance. It's all there. So peace, what you have to understand from all of this, peace is not a profitable industry. It doesn't make any money. And so for them, the government and the private military, engineers that make all the weapons and all the things that is used for war, endless conflict is the norm for them. That's what they want. So anyway, this basically is God bringing this all to a culmination in this first red horse. Anyway, let's go back to the text and try to understand what this is. Some have suggested the rider on the red horse is the false prophet, and basically, the associate of the Antichrist. But we don't know. I wouldn't make that claim. I think it's more symbolic of anything. I don't think it's a literal rider. I don't think it's even the false prophet. The false prophet is on the ground. There's no doubt about that, and he's doing whatever he needs to do. But at that time, the religious system, the whore of Babylon, is in place. The false prophet and the Antichrist really don't rise to religious prominence until the midpoint of the tribulation. But let's look at the color red. Like I said, it's related to war. But then when you look in the book of Revelation, in Revelation 12:3, Revelation 17:3 through 4, what you start realizing is the beast system is associated to red as well. So like I said, it's related to war, but it's also related to the satanic kingdom, the beast empire. And so there's something there that's satanic, okay? And I don't know all that's involved, but it is to Satan's advantage to do this, because what does Satan want out of this? He doesn't want the 10 kings ruling. He wants his son, the Antichrist, eventually ruling. So there's kind of this idea of mixing it up and getting them all to war and inciting war, so it eventually creates a situation where the Antichrist can rise to power over the 10 league confederation. So anyway, the breaking of the seal is, so it's under God's control and providence, no doubt about that, but under that control is Satan working to bring about, what he is trying to do in his agenda. But God is showing you that, no, it's Jesus who's in control. Jesus is controlling this. So anyway, what you have to understand about the tribulation, it's a 7-year period of tribulation, but what we have is 3 world wars, 3 global wars. And what you're seeing in this seal is the first war, the first world war, global war. And then at the midpoint of the tribulation, there will be another global war. And that's seen in Daniel chapter 11, verse 40. And it says this, at the time of the end, the king of the south shall attack him, talking about the Antichrist. And the king of the north shall come against him like in a whirlwind with chariots, horsemen, and with many ships, and they shall enter the countries, overwhelm them, and pass through. So what ends up happening is the Antichrist, at the midpoint of the tribulation, moves his army into the beautiful land, and the beautiful land is Israel, according to Daniel. And he moves in there, and he encamps in the valley of Jezreel. And what ends up happening, the minute he moves into Israel, the king of the north and the king of the south do a pincer move and attack him and try to trap him in that. And that's what this war is happens at this war. It is at this war that Antichrist wins the war, his armies win the war, but at the same time, his headquarters is destroyed in Babylon. He hears news from the east, it says in Daniel chapter 11. And so his headquarters, Babylon, is destroyed. And then he himself is killed in this battle. He suffers a wound, a fatal wound, and Revelation says he suffers a head wound. So he is killed in this battle, even though his army wins. And then we see from the book of Revelation that he has a counterfeit resurrection, to counterfeit the resurrection of Jesus. And so he resurrects, Satan, I don't know what's involved in a counterfeit resurrection, but he comes back from the abuso, the bottomless pit, and he is resurrected. And that's when the Antichrist forces worship of him. That's when he's taken down the 3 kings, and the other 7 submit to him. Because now, I mean, they think he's God. A lot of people think he's God, and he's got lying signs and wonders. He can do supernatural things. The false prophet is supporting him. And so that's when he takes possession and starts ruling the earth for the last 3.5 years of the tribulation period. So that's the second global war. And then the third global war is what we call the Battle of Armageddon. And it should be noted, it's not one battle, it's called the campaign, really, is what it should be called, the campaign of Armageddon, because it's a series of different things that happen, which culminates in Messiah coming back and ending it all and finishing the campaign of Armageddon. But anyway, the campaign of Armageddon is spoken of in Revelation 16, 14 and 16, and it says this: "For they are spirits of demons performing signs which go out to the kings of the earth and of the whole world to gather them to the battle of the great day of God Almighty." So these spirit demons, these frog-like demons that go out, they coax the world leaders to come and do a global battle on the great, and really a lot of them are gathered to fight Jesus. Now, I don't really know if they understand they're going to fight Jesus. They may think that from some type of lie that the Antichrist has given them, that these are aliens invading us or something like that. They're going to spin it somehow. And it says they gather together there to the place called in Hebrew Har Megiddo, which is the Valley of Megiddo. We call it Armageddon, but it's really Har Megiddo. And it's the Jezreel Valley. And that's the staging ground. Okay, so the battle ensues, and obviously the kings of the earth are gathered there to make war, and to actually make war against the Messiah, it says. And so they basically turn the guns on Jesus, which I know it sounds crazy, but again, we don't know if they fully understand. Do they think this is Jesus? Maybe they do. Or do they think this is an alien invasion, or, you know, we're being invaded by these entities, these ETs or whatever? I don't know. But anyway, they come to make war against him. And when Jesus comes back, obviously, with him, they're routed. They're destroyed. And it says in Revelation 19 through 21, it says, "And I saw the beast and the kings of the earth and their armies gathered together to make war against him, who sat on the horse, and against his army. And then it says, then the beast was captured, and him the false prophet, and with him the false prophet, who worked signs in his presence, by which he deceived those who received the mark of the beast and those who worship his image. These 2 were cast alive into the lake of fire burning with brimstone, and the rest were killed with the sword which proceeds from his mouth of him who sat on the horse, and all the birds were filled with their flesh." So there's a lot of things that happen here when Jesus comes back. The armies of Antichrist are trying to eliminate the remnant of Israel that are in Petra and Jerusalem. And basically what ends up happening is Jesus, according to Zechariah, kills the Antichrist, and the false prophet are killed. And then he literally melts the armies of the Antichrist. And Zechariah 14 mentions this. And it says their eyes and their tongues dissolve while their body just basically dissolves into liquid. He melts them. That's the best word I can use. It's kind of like the Raiders of the Lost Ark scene where they open the Ark of the Covenant and they look in and they all melt. It's that kind of scene. And that's what creates this lake of blood that's 200 miles square between Petra and Jerusalem. So it just melts them, and all that's left is liquid. So it creates a lake of blood as high as the horse's bridle for 200 miles square. It's a lot of blood. But that's what happens when he melts them. So it's kind of anticlimactic the way Armageddon ends. All these armies are coming against Jesus or whatever to try to offset that, and it's like snap of his fingers, so to speak, and the word comes out of his mouth, and they're dead. He melts them. It's like anticlimactic. There's no challenge, right? And of course, we will be there and see all of this. But that right there is the third global war that we see. And so that's what this is pointing to. But what's our application? Well, again, there can never be true peace on this earth without Christ. He has to come back. And then once he comes back, he is the Prince of Peace, and he is who ushers in 1,000 years reign of peace. But without Christ, there can be no peace. And that's what this false horseman, the first horseman brings of the Antichrist, brings a false peace. And it doesn't hold. Because immediately, chronologically, the false peace doesn't hold, and it's short-lived, and it goes and devolves into a global war. So this is important for all of us. We don't put our hopes in human institutions. We don't put our hopes in humans for lasting peace. We don't put our hopes in political leaders and treaties and organizations like the UN. They're all going to fail. True peace only comes through Jesus Christ when he rules and reigns. Do we work towards having peace? Of course we do. You know, we just don't turn a blind eye to stuff, but we ultimately know we're not going to get to where we need to be without Jesus. Okay, we're not going to bring in the kingdom like the Christian nationalists think, or the post-millennialists think, or all millennials or whatever, thinking they're going to usher in the kingdom by themselves without Jesus and create peace. You're not doing it. We try to have peace one-on-one. That's the idea. Live peaceably with all men as much as we can, as much as it is in our power. But we're not looking for humans to save us. We got to do our job, but understand where our trust is. It's in Jesus bringing peace. So prepare for rising instability. Jesus warned in the Olivet Discourse, you will hear of wars and rumors of wars. See that you are not dismayed. And so the idea is you're going to see a lot of instability heading in that direction. And you're going to see increase in conflicts. The violence will increase. And Jesus called this birth pains, right? And so it's all heading in a direction, especially if you watch the Middle East and Israel, the birth pains are happening. It's going to continue to get worse there, right? And so, again, why don't we have peace? Well, on a personal level, people have rejected the Prince of Peace. The world leaders, do you think Vladimir Putin has accepted the Prince of Peace? Of course he hasn't. A lot of these world leaders have not. And so there are consequences for rejecting Jesus, who is the Prince of Peace. That means then they will go and try to grasp power. That's all it's about. And they want to dominate and control. That's what's happening around the world. Rejecting Christ leads to destruction. It leads to people looking for power, grabbing power as much as they can, and they don't care how they do it. The end justifies the means, whether they steal it or have to kill for it. They will search for power when you reject Christ. And that's what's happening all around the world. But those who know Christ seek peace. They want not only true peace with God, but they want true peace with their fellow man. But the way this world's going, as you know, broad is the road of destruction and many who find it. Narrow is the path and few who find it. So those who know the way of peace, there are few of them. There are few of them. There's a few there in Washington, but not a lot. But we understand this. And so our job, even though I can't affect geopolitical aspects, I at least can affect my world around me. That's my mission field. And I am to usher in, as much as I can, the Prince of Peace to people so they can experience peace with God and then peace on the horizontal level with their neighbor. So anyway, we'll continue to pick this up when we look at the third seal next time. We'll see you then. God bless you.